There are crimes that happen in chaos. Sirens, shouting, violence you can hear. And then there are crimes that happen quietly, in bedrooms, in kitchens, in homes that look pretty normal from the outside. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, a pregnant woman and her 2 young daughters vanished from a suburban home in Colorado. There were no signs of forced entry, no neighbors heard a struggle, nothing appeared broken. Because the threat wasn't a stranger, the danger was already inside the house. Tonight, we're not here to sensationalize what happened. We're here to understand it. This video discusses domestic homicide and the murder of children. If at any point you need to pause, please do so. Support resources are listed in the description. What you're about to hear isn't a story of sudden rage. It's a story of emotional silence, avoidance, and entitlement. A story about how someone who appeared calm, quiet, and ordinary could commit an act of unthinkable violence. This is the psychology behind the Chris Watts case. In the summer of 2018, Shanann Watts was 34 years old and 15 weeks pregnant. She was deeply involved in her children's lives, active in her work, and by many accounts intensely devoted to her family. Her daughters, Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, were described as affectionate, expressive, and closely bonded to their mother. From the outside, the Watts family looked ordinary. A suburban home, 2 parents, 2 children, another on the way. Nothing about their lives suggested what was coming. Chris Watts did not fit society's image of a violent man. Co-workers described him as dependable, neighbors described him as polite, friends described him as quiet and reserved. There were no public outbursts, no criminal history, no visible aggression. And this is where many people struggle to understand the case. Because we are conditioned to believe danger announces itself. But in criminology, there is a category of offender known as the covert family annihilator. Someone who internalizes conflict, avoids confrontation, and maintains a calm exterior while privately disengaging from their life. Chris Watts fits that profile precisely. Watts exhibited several key psychological traits. He suppressed emotion instead of processing it. He avoided conflict rather than resolving it. He relied heavily on external validation, and his sense of identity was fragile. Instead of expressing dissatisfaction in his marriage, Watts emotionally withdrew. He began an affair, and with it, he constructed a fantasy. A fantasy where he could start over, a fantasy where responsibility disappeared, a fantasy where consequences didn't exist. This was not explosive anger, this was escape. Many people assume the motive was money, stress, or rage, but forensic psychology points to something else, annihilative escape. Watts did not want to be seen as a divorced man, a father who abandoned his children, or the villain of his own story. He wanted a clean slate, without accountability. And in his distorted eternal logic, the solution was not leaving, it was erasing. Shanann returned home from a business trip in the early hours of August 13th. She was exhausted, pregnant, and unaware that her husband had already decided her fate. Her murder was intimate and controlled. There was no evidence of a sudden emotional explosion, no chaos, no loss of control. This was not someone snapping. This was someone acting on a decision already made. Many spousal murderers do not kill their children. Crossing that line requires a separate psychological threshold, one that involves dehumanization and moral disengagement. In Watts' eternal narrative, Bella and Celeste became obstacles, extensions of a life he no longer wanted. This is known as instrumental filicide, killing children not out of hatred, but because they interfere with a desired outcome. And this is where the case becomes especially disturbing. Bella was 4 years old enough to sense fear, old enough to ask questions, old enough to understand that something was wrong. Her awareness matters. It tells us this was not dissociation, not psychosis, not confusion. Watts continued despite knowing exactly what he was doing. That places this crime firmly into the category of controlled, goal-oriented homicide. In the days following the killings, Watts gave media interviews. And what stood out wasn't what he said, but what was missing. There was no visible grief, no emotional chaos, no desperation. Instead, there was performance, flat effect, carefully chosen language, concern for how he appeared. This wasn't shock, it was cognitive dissonance. Chris Watts can be classified as a family annihilator, covert subtype, a perpetrator of instrumental filicide, motivated by avoidance, entitlement, and fantasy, triggered by a sudden identity shift paired with a secret life. He did not lose control, he made a series of choices. This case endures because it dismantles comforting myths. That danger looks violent, that silence equals safety, that nice people cannot be dangerous. Sometimes the most dangerous individuals are the ones who never raise their voice, because they never reveal the war happening inside them. If this case brought up difficult emotions for you, please check the support resources in the description. You deserve care and safety. Thank you for watching with intention. This has been MyCrimany.